Welcome to Channel Security Secrets. I'm Lou Raban. On this show, we expose the untold secrets and critical insights from the people shaping the future of cybersecurity sales in the Trusted Advisor channel. If you're looking to up your game around selling security, stick around. Channel Security Secrets is brought to you by Cyber Defense Group, on a mission to shift cybersecurity from reactive to resilient. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Channel Security Secrets podcast. I'm Lou Raban, but today's guest is really interesting. I'm really excited to speak to him. He's actually, this is our first episode, and he's our first guest, a good buddy as well. He's a pioneer and recognized leader in the technology and communication sector with over 15 years of experience driving innovation. He's a featured voice in the channel's speaking events like IT Expo 2025. He's also host of another podcast, the Channel 2.0 podcast, where he meets industry experts and explores the trends shaping the channel ecosystem. He founded a powerhouse company in the technology solutions space and empowers suppliers and accelerates revenue across the TSD community. Please welcome the president at Channel Advisors, Kameron Olsen. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lou. I couldn't think of a bigger honor than being your kickoff guest for this really cool podcast. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you going through all the bumps here, helping me figure it out. So really appreciate it. Let's just jump right into it. What's the first question I have is, what is the biggest secret to your success in the channel?
Hey, this is an interesting conversation and something I've been pondering on over the last couple of years. Because as I started up the Channel Advisors, my goal with the organization was to teach people how to have success. I've been lucky, in my channel career to what I would say trip over success. And so I had to spend some time really thinking back of like, okay, if I was to teach somebody how to do this, what are the steps to do that? And so the first thing I think where things really started to change for me is when I sat down and really decided what my values were and what was important to me. Up to that point, I was a terrible sales rep. I would come in at 10 o'clock, leave at 3, and usually play golf or take a long lunch in the middle of that. And when I wasn't making any money, I had to sit down and think, okay, what do I really want out of this? And what I wanted to do is to provide for my family. And so I made the decision that I was going to do whatever it takes to be successful in being a sales rep. Luckily, I found a company, and through the hard work, I think the second piece is finding a mentor or a place where you can get education and training in the channel. It's kind of tough because there's not a whole lot out there. But finding a mentor was immense. And I think if you put in the hard work, they kind of find you. Anybody who can see somebody who's willing to put in the work and the effort will typically gravitate and grab good people and pull them under the wing. And I think that's how this channel is built. And then I think the big piece is having an owner mentality. Like I've rented out houses, and you can have two different renters. You can have people who've only rented houses, and you can have people who have owned houses. And people who own houses, when the light bulb is broke, they fix it. And renters call you and say, hey, come fix it. And so having an owner mentality is like, I'm going to own this stuff and I'm going to do whatever it takes to fix it and do it. I think asking lots of questions is super important. And then I think the last piece where I really spend a lot of my time, if you've ever read the book, Ray Dalio's book, Principles, there is a process of try something, and when you fail, diagnose why you fail, redesign the process, and try again. And the faster you can do that over and over again, I think that's where success comes from. So that's kind of like my 5-step process to finding success in the channel.
That's awesome, and it's true. I think first you talked about luck and kind of tripping over luck and success, but the process you just described is essentially the road to success, which is, I always quote Winston Churchill on this: success is going from failure to failure with no lack of enthusiasm. And that's pretty much it.
Celebrating failure. Yes, I
Yeah.
failed. I figured out how not to do it.
Yeah, and Ray Dalio, I love he's done little infographics and stuff. He posts on LinkedIn a lot. He's got like a Telegram channel that I've subscribed to. He has a new book out now too, so he's like really very out there. But yeah, it's true. It's the problem is a lot of people they stop, right? They start they get that first hurdle and then they're like, "Well, no, that's a roadblock." That's not just a roadblock, it's a huge wall and they don't want to climb it, and then as you go through successive failures and blocks, you start to see them not as walls, but as speed bumps or, obstructions that you need to get around versus, okay, that's it. So taking that owner mentality, I love that analogy too about the owner versus renter. Been there, done that. And if I told you about the way my last tenant treated my place, nightmare, but we won't get into that.
I mean, that was something I learned early on when I moved from Salt Lake City to Dallas and I rented out my home here because we worked there because we weren't sure this was a permanent thing. Like somebody finally told me, you got to find people who are used to owning homes, not just permanent renters. And so, yeah, it was a huge thing for me. I think the other thing that's really important to understand, specifically in sales in general, is besides being an entrepreneur or a CEO, it's the only position and job where you have to create your own job, right?
Mhm.
It's not something you can just sit back and be responsive to, although there is plenty of times of being responsive, but a lot of it is generating your job. And I think that's hard for most people to understand.
Yeah. Man, I have so much more respect for sales and salespeople in the last 2 years. I came at it as a practitioner, I'm obviously been doing security for most of my career, and so I came in thinking probably what people, based on what you're saying, come in as salespeople like, hey, just have to be really friendly, have to, maybe some steak dinners and buy some drinks, etc., and then success. And it's so much more than that. I mean, it's probably as hard to be good at sales as it is in any other career. The problem is it's just a low barrier to entry. And so people are like, hey, I don't need any special qualifications. I can just speak and have a good maybe Rolodex. But not the case anymore. You really have to, for anything, you have to put the hard yards in, and it's funny because you have kids, I know, and same here. Anyone with kids is, you recognize that and try to tell your kids, "Listen, you can't just, go." My kids, the way they speak to me, oh my god, like, they're like, "Dad, no, I'm not gonna do that, blah, blah." I'm like, "You guys know I'm the CEO, like, people don't speak to me like this normally."
Nothing could test your patience as much as interacting with your kids, right?
Yeah, yeah, teenage sons especially, and it's like, "Guys, I'm not used to this." I'm not saying that people do what I do, nor am I, implying that I'm like some kind of, nasty leader, directing everyone, but still, it's kinda like, you go in and or whatever, as an expert, you open your mouth and people listen, whereas when you have teenage, kids, they're like, "Yeah, why should I listen to you?" So
Yeah, they know everything. Why should they listen?
totally,
You're good
totally,
to go.
but
You're just an old boomer. What do you know in this world?
exactly. Yeah. And so, when I going back to where you're trying to give these lessons to the, salespeople that are maybe just starting out, it's kind of like having kids, right? It's like, hey, we've been there, done that. So and that's where I want to talk more about what you're doing at Channel Advisors, because I think that there's value there where you're kind of trying to guide people to say, hey, this is a new thing. Even if you've been in sales for a while, the channel's a whole different experience. But let's before we go into that, I want to kind of ask you something else about. I want to go back to the security stuff. Like, what's the number one piece of advice you might give to a trusted advisor about that hasn't sold security before that wants to, and maybe there's even a, before you answer that question, I just thought of another one, which is even more important is how do you find it to sell security? Let's go to that first. How is selling security in the channel? Do you think it's difficult?
Yeah, it's tough, man. It is tough. I think we have to back up a little bit to
Yeah.
lay the groundwork and the foundation of cybersecurity in the channel. Like what most people don't realize when they come chat to me is there's two channels, right? You have disti MSP channel, and then you have your TSD TA channel. The MSP disti channel does support, right? I always said somebody in customer service or technical support, when they go start a business, they go start an MSP. And somebody who is in technical sales, when they go start a company, they go start a TA, right? So a little bit of two different mindsets. And when both of these sides got started, the MSP started with network LAN. They started with cybersecurity. They started with cloud. They started with firewall switches, routers, those types of things. And when the TAs got into the space, they did internet and long distance and dial tone. Well, within the last 4 or 5, maybe 6 years, TAs have started to pick up cloud and cybersecurity, and the MSPs have started picking up internet connections and UCaaS and CCaaS. And so now there's this kind of overlap. And I think the place where trusted advisors go wrong with cybersecurity is they think it's a SKU or a product, just like a UCaaS seat or just like an internet connection, and it's not. It's not necessarily a product. It's more of a mentality or a process or a system. And I think the trusted advisors in the TSD space really kind of struggle with that sales mentality in that process.
Yeah, it's a solution. It's not a product sale for sure. So that's the problem in the skew, the transactional nature of that. But wouldn't you say any sale like that's the thing? I mean, full disclosure, I'm learning the channel myself. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast. I want to speak to smart people like you to teach me what the heck's going on here. So, is there like a transactional nature where like isn't maybe there's some TAs that are better at that transactional SKU stuff and some TAs that are better at the solution sale, or do you think they all need to understand solution selling?
Trusted advisors are like snowflakes. There's no two trusted advisors alike. And then you have a really broad gamut of that spectrum. You have everybody who is a very transactional, hey, I have a website, you can click on what you need and we'll get you pricing, all the way through where I know some cybersecurity trusted advisors that are executives or board members of some of these cybersecurity companies, right? They understand not only the cyber product, but they understand how the business needs protecting and how to build a business around the product. And the answer is yes and no. Like there are some out there who really understand it and they do amazing. They do amazing things selling the product. And there's other people who are struggling. So if I had one word of advice for trusted advisors, it's like this is not a product you can just know the SKU numbers and what it does. It's a deep dive into understanding the mentality of cybersecurity frameworks, NIST, all of that type of stuff. In order for you to be a true consultant, you can't just come in and say, "Hey, do you need cybersecurity?" Because the customers are going to be like, "Well, I have a firewall," and if you don't know anything past that, then you're going to be like, "Oh, okay, see you later." And so, yeah, it really requires you to be a true consultant, to the whole nature of that word.
I think you just hit on the one of the main problems though is that I think because security is can also be kind of very esoteric and like pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, black box kind of stuff, and all these things. I think some trusted advisors are afraid to like bring it up because if it does, to your point, they start to say, "Hey, firewall." Well, forget firewall. We need MDR, EDR, DSPM. And then it's like, whoa, okay. Then they don't want to feel like that. They don't want to feel like completely out of their depth, so they kind of avoid it. Are you seeing that too?
Yeah, when you go in and your value prop or your value pitch is, "Hey, I know all things technical," and then all of a sudden you ask a question and you can't answer basic responses, it puts you in kind of a weird position. And so I think there are different ways of selling it where you don't have to get into those crazy conversations or lose your value based on the fact that you can't answer questions, right? Really, really, I think a trusted advisor job is to be a connector into the ecosystem and find the right resources and help them overcome and understand the technology and bring in the right products and the right people at the right time to answer the right questions to get the problems fixed. I think what trusted advisors in the channel does really well is it translates, right? So SaaS and telco and cyber providers have a product. You mentioned EDR, MDR, all of those types of things. We talk about ransomware and whatever other problems there are out there. Business owners don't know what EDR is. They're never going to come up to you, especially on the small business side, and say, I need an EDR solution, or hey, I need an MDR solution, or hey, do you have a SOAR or SOC? They're not going to ask those questions. They're going to say, hey, I have real concerns that competitors or bad actors or somebody's going to come in and cause issues to my business. How do I make sure that that doesn't happen? And if you don't know how to translate those conversations from one side to the other, then it's going to be hard for you to sell it.
Yeah, so the solution would be, other than educating themselves because they may already, have limited time or not the interest to really get deep into cybersecurity. What I'm hearing you say is that they can say, "Listen, not my area of expertise, but I know I got a guy or I got someone," kind of thing. Is that right?
Yeah, I think you got a guy is perfect, but you also have to know where your guy is.
Yeah, guy being a vendor or supplier in
Yeah,
this.
guy,
Yeah,
gal, like, let's
yeah,
not be sexist, right? There's plenty of really smart people on both sides of that fence, but,
yeah.
and then you have to know enough about the technology, and I think where our industry could do better is when we go to events, instead of suppliers, going to an event and saying, "Hey, I paid 20 grand to be here. I paid 10 grand to be here, so I'm just gonna throw a commercial at you." It's, "Hey, let's sit down and talk about the product, what pain points it solves, how to identify the opportunities to capture the attentions of the trusted advisors and those that wanna lean in and find or have customers or have verticals they go after that would be great for the cyber product to sit down with those suppliers, and then suppliers have to create better sales enablement tools, and sales enablement tools aren't email campaigns. Sometimes they're educational tracks, sometimes they're certifications, sometimes they're, things to help the trusted advisor really grasp the concepts of the things you're trying to fix.
You think the TSDs are doing a good job at that right now?
I think there's always room to improve.
We're not naming any names here.
No, there are brilliant people in our industry, right? There are people that know this stuff like the back of their hand, although I don't know the back of my hand really well, better than the back of their hands. Um, that can talk circles around these things. They just know the insides and the outs, but you have to find them and you have to know who to trust, right? Because not all people understand the product and not all people understand the channel. And it's hard to find somebody who understands the channel and the product all at the same time and bring those together to make it a great experience for everybody.
I have to give a shout out to my buddy Stefan Semmelroth, who's going to be on this, working for a bond. He's always giving me shout outs, so I'm giving him a shout out. He is the man. Everyone
He
knows
is. He's
Stefan,
great.
and
Yeah.
he is the like when you talk about that person, I always think of him. He's phenomenal. So
Yeah. I think the other thing, and Lou, I'll give you a shout out. I think sometimes what's missing is I said you have to be like a true consultant. And I think there is a really big space within our channel for people to bring in consultants. Like if you are not the expert, but you have relationships that are untapped and you haven't had conversations with them around this topic, finding somebody like you and your organization that can come in and have the agnostic approach, have the framework discussion, have the check boxes that I call it the Jiffy Lube checklist of, hey, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? And when the answer is no, learning how to like dive in and dig into that particular topic, I think we should have more organizations like what you provide into the channel.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cameron. Yeah, it's listen, at the end of the day, it's what we're finding in cybersecurity. These point products don't work. And there's a lot of, the MSP model of just like is kind of like what you were talking about with TAs. Do you want fries with that kind of thing? That doesn't work. You're and especially now, because as you know, we do incident response too. We're seeing a lot of hacks that are basically just configuration errors. IT dropped the ball. The last 3 or 4 we've done are IT dropped the ball. Either they were sharing passwords or, really basic hygiene stuff. And so what customers are finding out is they can't do it like that anymore, especially if they're mid-market. Enterprise has a lot of money to spend on this, and they've got their own problems. Enterprise is by no means completely locked down. That's a misconception. But mid-market is where a lot of the bad guys are going because they know they have the money and they don't have the teams that the enterprise has. And so, and then, SMB is just a disaster. I don't want to, and not by their own, they just don't have the money and there's no real provider for them. But that's what's happening to your point is like what companies, everyone has to start learning is this is a programmatic thing. This is not a, let me drop to, yeah, you got this point product, that point product, MDR, EDR, whatever. Check. You got your SOC 2 certification. Joke. I'm sorry, but any of this, like SOC 2, even ISO, all that stuff. ISO's a lot better. Won't get into geeking out about this right now. But the point is that there needs to be more. So I appreciate the kudos. Hopefully that's where the industry is going because of course, we wanna make money and dominate and all that stuff, but we also wanna we have to secure this stuff. This is not just it's no longer commercial, but it's also defense. It's home defense.
Yeah. I mean, everybody knows the book "Who Moved My Cheese," right? Like, it's easy to say, but in practice, I don't think it's really easy to live. And I think the problem with cybersecurity, it is a massive game of cat and mouse. As soon as you fill a hole, the bad actors find another one, and it is
Yep.
a constant moving target. So, I mean, I would guess in your years of selling cybersecurity, it's never been a target that you're able to hit. It's always a moving target you gotta go fill. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, that's why it's gotta be programmatic. It's not like, we use so many analogies, cars or human bodies, etcetera. Like, you can never go to the doctor and they say, "Okay, take this pill and you're good for everything for the rest of your life," you know? It's like,
That
yeah.
would be nice. Let's hope with AI it brings us that.
Yeah, soon when we're plugged into a whole machine. But anyway, um, yeah, it's not just one pill. It's like you diet, exercise, genetics, all this other stuff. Cyber is very similar in that it's a systematic, programmatic approach. But
It's a holistic approach.
yeah, we these are secrets, but I wanna veer back into the channel, side of it, and, one other maybe question about that is, how do you choose a vendor? So when you're looking at security vendors, what do you think, what are the ones that you think are great? What are the ones that you think you avoid? Not naming names, but
Yeah.
conceptually.
Let's throw people under the bus. No,
Yeah,
the
right? Yeah.
the TSDs have done a decent job of going out and finding companies who provide a decent service. I think there's a couple issues in the cybersecurity landscape. Number one, I came from the UCAS side, so I owned a UCAS company, and what was interesting is when we first started building the organization, is we went out and we found a multi-tenanted platform, but then you had to go buy a soft phone, and then you had to go find a SIP phone, and then you had to bring in dial tone, and then you had to find somebody else to do video conferencing. And so you like had all of these like really disparaging systems, and then you had to bring them together. And the UCAS provider's responsibilities was to make sure that they all work together. But hey, if your internet broke, you know, your SIP trunks didn't work. And so they would call you because your SIP trunks were working. Then you would point like I see that exact same system in cybersecurity. There are so many different systems doing different things that companies have tool sprawl that they bought so many things that overlap, but then they have huge gaping holes of things that that they need that they didn't even know that they have. And so I think over time, and we're starting to see a lot of M&A and a lot of people coming together and trying to build a holistic solution, but it's really tough because it's such a broad term, because we're no longer fighting wars with bombs and guns, although there is still some of that. It's bits and bytes now, right? Cybersecurity providers are, for the most part, arms dealers. They're providing warfare tools for companies to fight bad actors, and it's a constant thing. You gotta train your troops, you gotta provide the tools, you gotta be watching your gates, you gotta be, making sure you have good locks, you gotta be, like, increasing your infrastructure. And so I think, to answer your question, what do you look for in a good provider? I think it's somebody who's forward thinking, always iterating, somebody that you can trust, and trust is a big topic of a whole other
Mm,
segment, but somebody who you know and can stand behind, that when things go wrong, and technology does, and especially in cybersecurity, you're not unhackable if you have a cybersecurity solution. But when things go wrong, do you have a company that can stand behind you and make that tough phone call and let you know things are going wrong, and will make that phone call when your client's been hacked about the same type of enthusiasm as closing a 10K deal, right?
right.
It's you have to have somebody who's willing to do both.
Yeah, big time. And I that's great because also it's the why. I think that that's really important is often we get a lot of inbound requests like, "Hey, they want a pen test." And we're like, Why? Like, can we speak to them?" Often, sometimes TAs get a little bit they push back because they want to protect that, and I don't blame them, by the way. You don't want your client speaking to like 50 different providers. They're going to get fatigued pretty quickly, and plus that's the TA's job, right? Is to filter that stuff. So I totally understand and I get it. But we have to ask why for exactly the reason that you're mentioning, which is they probably don't need a pen test. They probably actually need more of they need a whole security team. And instead of doing these things like one by one piecemeal throughout the year and not getting any results and spending as much, if not more, than they would if they just approached the problem the right way the first place. That's why we ask why often. And I think if TAs start asking, okay, you need a pen test, but and then we equip them, they've got to have a bunch of questions. And I think getting past those questions, and being able to ask the questions and not being intimidated, I mean, that's where they should pull in a vendor like us. But if they can't, maybe having enough ammunition. But the why is really important because, yeah, otherwise it's just they're going to lose trust. You mentioned trust. I think trust is lost when um, a TA recommends someone obviously and it falls apart. That's
Yeah.
why we love going in because we're like, trust me, they will love you. Bring us in and things will be good. And that's what the other vendors have to do, obviously. And not to your point, wait until, be really happy at the sale and then absent when something actually goes wrong. But also, they just need to engage on a deeper level and make
Yeah.
sure that the trust that the TA can bring the right solutions is there. So
I've always loved the analogy, like when a customer says, "Hey, let's do a pen test," and the trust advisor is like, "Okay, I'll go find you a pen test." It's like, first question should be with, like, "Well, do you have doors on your house? Have you added locks? Like, have you closed your windows?" Like,
exactly.
let's make sure you've done at least what the bare minimum is before we do a pen test, because it's just gonna tell you all the things you know already, but just by looking at your network.
Yeah, yeah, we've had a couple inbound. It's like, why? What you're doing this pen test. Yeah, just to tell you that things aren't the way. Well, we do it every year, and we've got to do it for compliance, or oh, when we know, but we're going to get to that. It's like no, you really and we started turning them down. To be completely frank, in the beginning, I was like, bring it. We don't, but yeah, it's like okay, you want go ahead, do your pen test when you're ready to do something. Really do security, and call us up. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, let's talk about your biggest challenge. What's your biggest challenge today? In the channel at least.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I think number one, I think our biggest challenge is that we just don't have enough data, right? I think We're a fairly young industry. I mean, we got started in the late 90s, so we're 25 to 30 years old as an industry, which in industries is really young, right? And the way that this industry was built was, off the backs of back end deals and spiffs and commissions and gut feels. We went from 50 suppliers to 500 suppliers in the channel in 5 years. And you'd be shocked on the amount of suppliers in this space that don't have CRMs. They don't have basic tools to start tracking. And when you don't have tools and metrics to track, you don't know where things fall short. So when your revenue numbers start to dwindle, or when things start to get tough, you don't know where to go plug those holes. So I'll say, like, numbers are cybersecurity for suppliers. It's like, okay, let's go look at where our gaps are in our channel program. Hey, we're out there. We're bringing all sorts of trusted advisors in the front door. They're looking at our product, but we can't get anybody to bring us an opportunity. Well, there's probably something wrong with your messaging, but you don't know that if you don't see the numbers, right? You're just like, hey, there's something wrong and let's go work harder. And right. So you're going out and finding more partners, but that doesn't change the fact that very few of them actually like your product or your messaging or need your whatever. Right. So I think number one is metrics, I think, is a big piece. I think number two, there's not a lot of education and training. I haven't met hardly any members in the channel that are supplier focused that have had any sort of formal onboarding or training on what the channel is. So
Mhm.
it's people who have come in and found a good mentor and have taken them under the wing and showed them how to do it. Um, but what that's caused is it's very, very difficult to come into the channel with the huge expectations because channel managers are expensive, channel programs are expensive, and there needs to be immediate results, but we don't have the data. And so you get an 8 or 9 month ramp. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know that you have stuff coming in the pipe, and there's very little tolerance for failure before they start churning over. And so being able to bring in some new fresh blood, teach them how to run a channel program, I think will do wonders for the trusted advisor. Having somebody here's the biggest eye opener for me in the last couple months. I have interviewed now about 10 field sales rep on the TSD side and about 10 trusted advisors. And I asked them, if you could pinpoint the single thing that makes a channel manager successful or not, what is it? And all of them have said they follow up. That's simple.
Mhm.
They follow
Mhm.
up. Like, that's the minimum barrier to entry. And if that's the minimum barrier to entry, it tells me that there's just not enough people knowing how to do this particular job. So I think it's those two things. I think it's numbers and I think it's training.
That's great. This is like gold here because that's what you do at the channel advisors, right? This is you're basically teaching both sides, right, how to operate. So tell me more, like what's your engagement model? How do you approach what does it look like?
Yeah, so typically what I get is there's such a huge gold rush of suppliers who are wanting to get into the channel. So a lot of the times I get a phone call or an email and say, "Hey, so and so told me to reach out to you. I want to get into the channel." And the first thing I said is, "Why do you want to get into the channel?" And they say, "Well, I have this one guy who sells my product and he usually sells more than my entire direct sales team. And when I asked him, how do I find more people like you? Their answer is, oh, you have to get into the channel." And then they go, what's the channel? Right. So it's usually an education and training of the model, right? Evergreen commissions, you need resources, sales enablement, you need a product that makes sense. Here's the
Totally.
category. So there's a whole training around what the channel model is. And then it's building some of the groundwork. It's, hey, I went out after my time at Teleris when I recognized there was a major pain point on the supplier side, and I looked for a methodology for indirect sales models. You can go out and you can do challenger sales, and there's hundreds of different sales methodologies and sales models. but I couldn't find a single place that had an indirect sales model, a sales through or sales with motion model. And so the first thing I did, I created it. I created a Channel 2.0 methodology that kind of lays out who's responsible for what along the way. And where I think most people go wrong is they don't realize that the suppliers have two funnels. You have a partner funnel, and if and only then, after you sell those people, do you get access to the customer pipeline. And so you got to make sure that that experience on the partner side is a pleasant experience, because if you don't do a good job of selling them, who are professional salespeople and typically have shown themselves to be very well, they're really good salespeople. They know good salespeople. If you show up and you don't show that you're an efficient salesperson, you don't follow up, you don't know your products, you don't know how to ask good discovery call questions, you don't even care about their business, there's no way they're going to give you access to trusted relationships that they've had for years. So, right, showing up the best you can as a salesperson to them to help them, only then do you get access. So building that indirect sales model, and then I just come in and I build the processes. So you have the methodology, you have the processes, and then you have the training. But more importantly, we help them with their messaging about their product, help them adjust their product if it's not right, and help them adjust their messaging if it's not right.
Yeah, we've learned that lesson the hard way. I mean, this is again just super you cannot it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier about being a salesperson. Show up day one with a corporate card, golf clubs and a couple people to call. That's only going to get you so far. Coming into the channel just like we've got a great product, that I've learned the hard way that if you build it, they will not come. You got to have a process. For sure. So, yeah, a little plug for what you're doing and the channel advisors because that for anyone looking to get into the channel, and we've worked with you, you've been great. So yeah, definitely give
Thank
you a
you.
call. But um, I want to go now personal because we don't even though this is channel security secrets, I also do want to kind of get to know you a little bit more. Even though I know you pretty well, but for our audience, you know, what do you do outside of work? Like what gets you going?
Wait, there's such thing as that? Like,
Yeah,
there's life outside of work?
yeah, that's a tough one for me too.
Y Yeah, I've been extremely blessed in my life, I'll tell you that. My first, my UCaaS business that I built, I had no business building it, but luckily I had a gentleman who believed in me and pulled me under his wing, and when I was building it, I was in the middle of going through college and raising 3 kids, and so my life was pretty hectic. A lot of guilt of being gone and focusing on business as much as I did, but we did a great job, and I have 3 amazing children that are pretty much raised. So my youngest is 16 and just graduated high school as a junior, so she's kind of up and running, and so now my hobby is building this business. I get to do it guilt-free, and I get to spend as much time as I want because they don't really want my attention most of the time except for to take them to dinner or, give them money for this or help them with that, so it's very few and far between. So I do spend a lot of time doing podcasts and building educational platforms and playing with AI and seeing it how it can integrate to what I'm doing. I'm a huge pickleball fan. I just picked up pickleball, and so it's my great way of relieving stress. And yeah, besides those two things and business, pickleball, and family, I do some concerts and music, and that's about it.
That's
My
awesome.
my life's pretty simple right now.
That hey man, that's good. I mean, you're living the dream in the sense that just getting your kids through is the high school is a big deal. I'm still in that, but also being able to do other things and work on what you want to do. That's the advantage of, the thing that people don't see when you own your own business though is those years that you were talking about, like going to college and putting the kids through school and the lack of time and sacrificing things. Now you're reaping the benefits to a certain extent, but it took a while, right?
It does, and it's, if you wanna get really personal, what's hard is really deciding the trade-off, because building a business or working at a job or learning a new trade so you can make more money, you have a skill set more than, you know, doing menial tasks and getting paid minimum wage is planning for the future. And there's a trade-off. You have to decide on how much you sacrifice now for the future versus how much you live in for today. And I don't, business owners are going to hate me for saying this, but there's not a right answer. You got to decide what's right for you. We had a tragedy in the family about a year and a half ago. We lost my daughter in a motorcycle accident.
Mm.
And I'll tell you, I would give every single dollar and everything I own to have her back. And so that tells me one thing, that money isn't the thing you should sacrifice everything for. At least not in my book, not in my value
Hmm.
system.
Hmm.
But I also realized that if I stopped working today and I lived life to the fullest and take my kids on trips and we went out to eat and we just had great experiences all the time, I'm going to be working at Walmart. Sorry, Walmart, but I'm going to be working at
Nothing
Walmart as
wrong
a
with that.
greeter.
Yeah. Insert minimum wage job here.
I don't, I don't want to be working into my 80s, right? I
Yeah.
want to be doing this type of thing. Retirement for me just says I get to say no to more of the things I don't necessarily love to do as much. So,
Yeah, no, it's a trade-off, and to your point, there's no right answer. There's no well, I will say that there is a right answer that you do need to take time for sure, and you do. There's no meeting, or I think I just read recently where there was someone that was winning an Oscar or something, and they missed it because their mom was turning 70. I don't know who that was, but yeah, that's, priorities, right? It's like they work hard, they did the work, but then they had a trade-off to, is this awards event more important than me seeing my mom turn 70? They said no. For some people, they would not agree for a number of reasons, but
yeah, look, the Academy Awards probably wasn't happy, but I think we
yeah.
should respect people and their decisions and just be much more aware of the decisions we're making and make them consciously versus just doom scrolling our way through life.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. It's really interesting to think about what's happening with technology. I mean, you mentioned AI. So, what are you doing with AI? Are you just using it like I am, like my own personal assistant, and slightly addicted?
Yes and no. I I am building platforms that allow sales teams to get critical real-time feedback during the sales
Oh,
process, right?
wow.
So if you are a channel manager and you're having calls, right now there's not a whole lot of places where you can say, how well did I do? What feedback would you give me? Unless your manager is sitting on that call with you all the time, it's really hard to get some of that feedback. And so trying to educate and train people real time is AI, it knows everything and nothing all at the same time. So if we can leverage some of the stuff we've built, the processes and the systems and the structure and all of that type of stuff, I think it speeds up our sales process and go to market motions faster. And we become better enablers for our trusted advisors to go find success as well. We give them the tools and the resources and the knowledge as us as a supplier that they need to go find success in their realm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean the use case for AI is almost limitless, and not to take over jobs, but to augment. It's a tool, to your point.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How do you see AI affecting the cybersecurity space?
There's a lot of great use cases. I mean, I think not just cybersecurity, but in every entry level position, it's kind of it's a little bit it's going to get tough for people that are graduating now, because the jobs that used to go to them are now going to AI. So same thing with cyber. I see AI as being that first layer. tier one analyst. Here are the alerts. Here's what they mean, even tier 2 to tier 3 perhaps, which is, okay, and this is what you should do to remediate it. I don't see it at a point where it's like, okay, let's auto remediate everything, where I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that, but it's a force multiplier for sure. I mean, just the things, the other day I had to parse a mailbox file for a reason, and I said I need a Python script to go through who's the 2 from, subject, etcetera, and it was like a 65 gig file. It did it it created a script for me, which, my Python scripting skills are like, baby level. So this wrote like, master level Python script to go through, pull this information out. There were a couple errors. I said, this is the error. Boom. Here's a new script. Literally within 5 minutes, I pulled this information out thanks to AI. So also with forensics, a lot of the things, technical things that we need to do, we can pull like, what's this Windows log mean? What's the context in this? What would an attacker do? Why am I seeing this? What other logs would correlate with that? It's amazing. But so AI being used by a human right now, I think is the use case for cyber. AI taking over certain cyber activities, definitely there's no doubt in the future. But and AI being able to run cyber, we got to wait a little while for that. Essentially, I think that might happen, but until you take humans out of the loop, there's always gonna be issues, so
Let me ask you a question about the future of cybersecurity. One of the things and one of the projects I'm working on with an MSP who focuses on that SMB range. You mentioned that, like, let's say under 250 users, that group of employers doesn't have the budgets, doesn't have the expertise, really struggles with the knowledge base and stuff. I mean, they're just struggling to kind of keep doors open and revenue coming into the space. I see large enterprise who are working on cyber insurance. They're going to Travelers or some of these big cyber insurance companies. Required these huge check boxes and things to fill out to get approved or underwritten for cyber insurance. When does that go down to the SMB business? When is the SMB required to get to those same levels that the enterprise is going to have to be at?
it's a great question. Right now, it's already happening where if you want a lot of coverage is not there because these companies can't answer those
They can't.
questionnaires. Yeah, or
Okay.
and so there are, I think, products for the SMB market. At least it's evolving. There was one point where they were like, "Here, use this browser plugin." The insurance company was giving a browser plugin saying, "This will tell us how your security is." It was a joke. So they're getting more sophisticated. So ultimately, what you're getting at, Cameron, is there is no use case in the future where a company can't have some basic level of cyber. Now, do they need an advanced program? We look at the world through maturity, through the lens of maturity when we're looking at companies. We're not saying, are you doing it or are you not? That binary thing, that doesn't work. It's, are
Okay.
you at least doing it enough to a basic level where you'll be able to detect something weird happening, or closing off the things that if you can't detect it, at least it's not a way in. Um, and then there's, you go up the level of maturity. So I think that everyone needs it. One of the IRs we worked was a small, much smaller structure. They didn't have cyber insurance, and it was actually painful. I felt bad, charging what we charged because I knew this was coming out of pocket for this person, and we don't normally do that. We're normally at the mid market and enterprise, but in this case, it all worked out. The point is, this person, it was almost like going to the casino. Like they did not invest in cyber or even IT to a point where this was definitely going to eventually happen to them, and they just had tech and security debt for years, and then finally, it landed on their number, but in the negative sense, and now the numbers that they're putting up, if they had invested in a program for the last 5 or 10 years, would have been half or less of what they paid amortized over that amount of time. So that's really what we're trying to get out there. It's like, yes, right now it's an investment. Right now, you may not see the reason, but if you do it proactively, you can do it at your own pace. And then when you do it at your own pace, you're heading off a future. There's a future ROI if there's not one immediately.
Mic drop.
Boom,
I
baby.
feel like you just gave your whole elevator pitch right there. That was like brilliant. It was perfect.
Well, that I wanted this to be more about you, not about me. So, any closing thoughts before we close out?
Yeah. Um, uh, uh, for me, I think the future is bright. I've never been so excited about what the possibilities are, but terrified at the same time. Optimistically apprehensive. Is that even a phrase that we could say? But
Cautiously optimistic.
there you go. All right. The world's our oyster right now. There's such an opportunity out there. There's such a demand, and there's such a huge need to have a trusted resource to come in and help guide these companies because the technology rate of change is not slowing down. The a rate of bad actors trying to hack and hold you hostage is not going down, and your competitors are not slowing down adopting technology to benefit and grow, and provide better experiences over you. And so the channel is a great place to be. The future's bright, and as long as you stay ahead of it and you put time in and learning and education, yeah, the world's our oyster at this point, I think.
I love it. I love the optimism, and I totally agree. So, where can people find you? You got your LinkedIn. We'll put links in our
Yeah, come to my
video as well.
house. We'll swim in the pool. We'll have a drink, all that. Come find me. Thechannel Go there. You can fill out a form. Come look at my stuff. A lot of my stuff is free, right? I want the channel to benefit, self-paced. If you just want to learn how to build better channel programs, come grab my stuff. There's a lot of stuff on my university. I have a job board. If you're looking for people, there's great people on there. That's all free. If you want me to come in and help you look at where you have holes and gaps, I'm happy to do that. If you want a curated experience to help you build your channel program, I'm happy to do that as well. So yeah, whatever you need, I can help or at least point you in the direction.
Awesome. Thank you, Cameron. Really appreciate having you here. Thank you to the audience. First episode, boom, down. And if you learned something today or you laughed, tell someone about this podcast, please. We're looking to get it out there. And thanks again, Cameron. Really great to chat.
Such a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Lou.
Yeah, absolutely. Been another exciting episode of the Channel Security Secrets podcast. See you next time. That's a wrap for this episode of Channel Security Secrets. Thanks for tuning in. For show notes, guest info, and more episodes, visit us at channelsecuritysecrets.com. Channel Security Secrets is sponsored by Cyber Defense Group. When it comes to protecting your business, don't settle for reactive. Partner with experts who build resilience from the ground up.